Denise Nichols mentioned uh, on her weekly program on Warrior Connection that the VA never um, ever accepted any physiological uh, etiology or cause, basically, if I said that right or wrong or whatever, any cause of the chemicals causing physiological damage to us. They just haven't included that at all in research or anything. And there is something I missed some of it, and I don't know exactly what they were talking about, but there's something about it all being top secret. There's been some times that it's been pushed for, and the answer is sorry, that's classified. We can't talk about that. And so, in my further research of what's going on with our bodies and ways that we can maybe fix it, and looking into all these alternative doctors that are breaking free from the system, which is good to hear. Like Dr. Living Good and some others, they are sick of the sick care system and they're breaking out into their own to actually heal people. And a lot of those healing paths are um, actually a lot of old science and suppressed science, specifically the thiamine, um, vitamin B,
B1, yeah.
and
B1.
and there's a massive dose of that you can get that's safe, and it's an injection twice a week, I guess. And it helps with almost every single disease there is out there. They've done study after study after study. I posted another a documentary or a documentary about it on Discarded Vet Doc on Facebook, where everything is always there, and that's the place to go in the Facebook group, which is now called Discarded Vet Doc. And so you should just search for that on Facebook. You can find that group. It's public, and you can join to get notifications, and it's an auto approved. So you'll just join and it will approve you and you'll be in. Um, and so, anyway, um, this whole thiamine science has been researched uh, up and down, left and right, just hundreds of different studies on thiamine in the body, and literally with almost every disease. Um, and that's very old science. And somewhere in the 50s or 60s or so, it got buried. Um, and Japan took it up and they started doing thiamine mixed in with a bunch of other stuff uh, for medicine. And they took that up and did all sorts of studies, and I think they use it in their healthcare. I could be wrong on that, but I think so with all the studies they did, and we just buried it, and it's not even used. And they wouldn't even diagnose people with stuff like if you had like diarrhea and just feeling bad and the low energy and all that kind of stuff. They would just give it to you, and it would work and keep you out of the doctor's office. And there's something along the mechanism of mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what Gulf War illness appears to be, and what long COVID appears to be, and many of these other syndromes that and even diabetes, I believe, that really attack the energy center, the mitochondria, and the blood flow. And so it's kind of interesting that they bury all that this is the solution to help with all this. It's just so crazy. But that video is in Discarded Vet Doc just recently, past day or so, and there's so much information in that video. It's unbelievable. And I'm only halfway through it. It's about 2 hours long, And there is a part one before it too that you could search for based off the name.
You know,
I didn't post it, but
hey,
anyway, go
you
ahead.
know how I found out about the B1 deficiency um, problem? From
How did you find
from a
out about
genetic test.
it? Oh,
Yeah, so you just might
yeah,
want to think about
and
that on my mom's side.
it really it really does impact a lot of systems, and a lot of the symptoms of having the deficiency,
Hmm.
or you have a lot of it in you, but it's not working right in your body. It's not
Yeah,
being used in your body
yep.
right. Are much like Gulf War illness,
Mm,
it's or long COVID or any of them. You
hmm.
got the fatigue, you got the, diabetes, high blood sugar type issues.
Yeah.
Just so many of those deficiency symptoms of B1
Hmm.
are what so many of us have, that they've been calling it mental illness, and they've covered this up. And, with all this research with Gulf War, they're seeking all these treatments. It's like, give us B1.
Yeah.
Like, it can resolve so much of our fatigue and dysfunction in our body. Even if it doesn't solve everything, it can at least, make things a little bit easier for us, and we can be more awake in our life than trudging through it, exhausted as soon as we wake up. It's horrific. And I can't believe that something so simple and easy is not something that we're getting help with. But that is a huge discovery, and we're just digging into this, and there's a lot more to come on this subject. You probably will hear a lot more about it because the cat's out of the bag. They buried this thing a long time ago, and it's back out of the bag again. And we're going to make sure it stays out, because I think a lot of us could benefit from this.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything new and amazing during the week there, um, Foxy?
Uh, I don't remember right now. Brain fog.
Uh,
I had a several day migraine, so I don't remember.
yeah,
Oh,
so
I can
her health has
remember.
been really, really bad. So that's
Yeah.
and that's one of the, just to jump right into relationship stuff, that's one of the toughest things about having CMI is, it just causes so much disruption in life, and thus relationships. Because if you're in a relationship with somebody and your life's disrupted by a 6-day migraine, 7-day migraine, whatever, um
Hmm.
that impacts your partner, and those kinds of things. Just, it takes a really, caring and empathetic and loving person to stick around through all that.
Yeah.
And as we know, in this reality and the way the society is sort of forcing people to be the opposite of that just to survive,
Right.
it's very rare. So
Hmm.
um
That codependent people are like all over it, or like people who are addicts.
yeah, yeah, well,
It's like no thanks,
yeah,
no
and
thanks.
that's true. Yeah. So, there's just so many challenges, and we'll just dive right into it since we got started there. I'll pull up my little sheet here. So the first thing I have here, bullet point, is talk about how I met Aaron, my story, and what I figured out about the human behavior and relationships. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible that relates to what we're talking about. And um, I'm not going to go into my full story, but just this relationship part piece of it. And
Hmm.
so all ever since the storm, Desert Storm in '91, I have had challenges with my relationships, and I could see in my personnel record, not my medical record, that there's a stark difference pre-storm and post-storm on my performance record. I went from being a 4.0 overachiever, they just will do anything to keep me in the military, super smart, super, motivated, leadership material, all this kind of stuff. And then post storm, it was lazy, defies authority, um, can't finish tasks, And I went from 4.0 overachiever. They want to keep me to 3 point something, 3.1. Maybe we don't want him. Um, and that was just within a few month period there. And that is really the nexus of what happened to me that I wasn't even aware of. And that was the cognitive impacts, the brain impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And, the defying authority, the not being lazy. The lazy isn't brain, but that's the mito and the energy levels. The defying authority is brain. And I think I figured out what that was, because I wasn't really like that before necessarily. But it did happen. And I remember the difference after seeing that, where I was just pissed off at all the leadership,
Yeah.
and I didn't know why. And I think it's because my brain knew what happened to me and knew who was
Mm-hmm.
responsible for it. And it had X them as the enemy. And my conscious awareness, you know, wasn't even aware of that
Yeah.
at that time. And that's really what I chalk it up to be. And had I had been in the military longer and I wasn't offered the early out because they started seeing these symptoms in me, and they were seeing them obviously with everybody else, they're like, okay, let's offer these guys an early out, get them out. They excused everything, all my reserve, everything got me out. So my medical record was nice and clean. So I didn't have a
Mm.
nexus from the military to post military for benefits and all that. And that I do believe, in my very strong opinion, because of all these facts, that that's exactly why we were offered the early out, and they quote unquote shrunk the military. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so anyway, after I got out, at the time I was super healthy and super smart before the storm, and I didn't know there was really anything different. Although I was starting to feel fatigue, I was starting to feel some things wrong. I never got sick before. I was getting sick a few times, and I even had beef with that on my exit exam, and they said, "Oh, it's just cold or flu or anything. It sounds like you're fine, right? Like there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
more serious than that." And I'm all, "Well, I guess not. I'm 21 years old. I didn't know much,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I didn't know what they were doing." And so anyway, I you know went through my whole life after that, and especially right after I was acing tests in school, graduated with honors. I was still doing really good mentally, but I had something going on in there that was starting to develop. And so, and it just got worse and worse and worse. In the 90s, it was happening, starting, getting worse. In the 2000s, it was even worse. The 2010s, even worse. And here we are in 2020s, and it's really bad. And so, all this time, I'd been telling all these jobs as I'm trying to climb the ladder that I'm super smart and I remember all this stuff. I don't even need to take notes. And what I didn't realize is I really needed to take notes. I really needed to do change the way I did things, because I was forgetting things. I was, not as smart as I used to be, because I wasn't even aware of these cognitive impacts. And also another feature of that too, along with the thought problems, was the emotional problems, where I had some damage to my emotional center. I was very angry. I had a very short fuse. I was very angry right when I came out. And luckily with that, I did catch that early on, and I almost got in trouble with the law about it, which was the main impetus of the change. And what I was actually lucky about, that I had a almost encounter with the law versus an encounter with the law and being put in prison, right, or something like that. But I had this short fuse, and I just didn't really have all the um, skills to deal with that, and it was different. Um, for me as a personality to be so angry, because I never really was angry. I was a very happy, easygoing, peaceful person before that. And So it was kind of a new thing going on, and I didn't realize what was going on. And but luckily, I got that anger under control, learned how to manage it, and my neuroplasticity, I guess, fixed that where it could have went very south
Yeah.
if I didn't catch that very early on. And there's probably a lot of vets in that area too. And I had my two marriages in that period, that first brief 5 year period, 10 year period, um, in the '90s, uh, and then I kind of fixed the anger and emotional issues as much as I could, other than being sad and depressed sometimes. Um, and I could still enjoy doing stuff. Um, but as time went on, um, all this stuff was getting way worse, especially the memory thing. I would forget things, and it's really that the memories aren't gone. I just can't access them. Something about my brain says you're not spending energy on that right now. It's not important. It just doesn't let me do it. But if somebody reminds me of something and it's important, I will remember those things. It's really crazy, but that's kind of how it works with me. But I didn't even realize I had any cognitive impacts till 2018, and that was after I met my wife. Um, and because I had so many failed relationships and jobs, because it affects your friends, family, and work, and neighbors and everybody that you interact with. And so, because I had so many problems with relationships up to the point that I met my wife in 2016, I I I made sure, and we did it on dating apps. I made sure that my profile said, I figured this out about relationships. I did a lot of studying of human behavior and all that, and I really narrowed down on that. A lot of people, when they first meet, they put on a mask basically, and they pretend to be a lot of things that they're not. And so
Hmm.
my profile said none of that, right? X that out, because I figured maybe that's what it is. Because I still didn't know at this point what was wrong with me yet. And so I figured that out, put that on my profile. Another thing, be completely honest with each other, talk about our past, so there's no surprises. So I made sure I did that with her. But the interesting thing about that piece of it was at this point, I tried to forget I had Gulf War illness, because I learned to solve the anger and all that, learned about the positivity stuff. And I thought, well, maybe if I just eat better and exercise and pretend I don't have Gulf War illness, pretend I'm healthy and thriving, that's what's going to happen. And so I
Oh,
did that. Huh?
Jason. Hey, I mean, oops.
What?
Hey,
Yeah.
uh, the grieving process has denial, right? Right. What is the second? Denial. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to
I
find out
went
you're
into
sick and be like,
denial.
oh, no, 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 let's not do that. Let's not be sick.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do that. And
Uh-huh.
the interesting thing about this is I actually did forget all about Gulf War illness, everything. I didn't think about Desert Storm. I didn't remember my
Wow.
military service. I guess that's what my brain had to do
Uh-huh.
to help me forget. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
mention any of that to her. I think I did mention to her I was in the Navy when I was young, but that's it. Like, nothing else beyond that. And so I had actually forgot that I had Gulf War illness, and so that was kind of a surprise to her. That kind of went against my whole thing. Um, but the thing that helped push me there too, by the way, where I was in my own denial, is that the VA was constantly saying, and providers out in public, or private, I went bankrupt twice trying to find answers after the VA wouldn't help me in the '90s, and everybody and just treated it like it was not real and it's all in my head and all that. So I started to actually think it was. I
Yeah.
started to believe the professionals that, yeah, I guess, I have problems and I just need to think more positive. So that's literally one of the main things that pushed me there. And I think a lot of vets have done this. And that's why a
Hmm.
lot of vets aren't responding right now, is because they may have even completely forgot that they've had Gulf War illness. And the brain may try and do that as a survival mechanism. Like, yeah, this could work. I can maybe make things work, but then you hit that wall, and that's exactly what I did. Is I hit a wall a couple years after we met, um, and that's when I found out, what was going on, and we had, we were in a very new relationship, and we were starting to have problems right away, and I was getting really upset because I was like, man, I thought I did it right this time. I thought I found the one. I thought, everything was going to work because of, you know, no mass and all that. We knew everything about each other before we jumped in and all this stuff. And I was upset that it wasn't working. And so, and I did identify early on that it was a communication problem. Like, well, it was a mixture of things. It was communication problems where I would say something and it comes out wrong and I didn't realize it, because I hit this wall and things were getting a lot worse where that happens when I'm stressed out, which is what happens when you start fighting. You get stressed out. And
Hmm.
so, I thought, okay, I need to correct that. And then also, Erin has some issues from her past where she's been made to feel like she's not worth much, and so she would take things I say and take them the wrong way, like I'm attacking her, putting her down, which I'm not trying to do, and say I say it right, and she hears it wrong. So it was either I was saying it wrong, she was hearing it wrong, or a little mixture of both, and we identified that really early on, and we figured a solution would be that, you know not to get super upset about something that's said, because it's probably wrong, is the whole deal.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
this is where this communication tool can help you so much in your relationships, is that uh, we made a rule that if some either of us said something and it hurt us, then we would let them know right away so it can be addressed. And because one thing she would do is I'd say something wrong, maybe, and she would bottle it up and harbor all this resentment against me. And then it would blow up later. And when it blew up later, that would create all these hard feelings and, damage to the relationship and all this stuff. And it's all just because I said something wrong and she didn't tell me about it. So the
Yeah.
solution was, okay, if you feel like I attacked you or hurt you in any way, let me know right then so I know, and then I can address it. And then, you say, "Hey, did you mean this?" And then I'll say, "No, I meant that," and then it's resolved, right? As one example, of how that could work. If that did that make sense? Do we need to do like a specific
Yeah.
example?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll give one.
Okay.
Um, just
Yeah.
that. Okay. So Jason is. Oops, I said your name.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Very, very well spoken and doesn't misspell words. And
Well,
yeah,
until
really.
now.
Until now. Okay. So now although I read something you wrote and I was like, what? There's just one word that totally just didn't fit at all. I was like, he absolutely knows what word that was supposed to be. And it was similar, but it wasn't exactly right. And it was strange. So I was like, you realize that's misspelled? And you're like, oh, oh, yeah, oops. Yeah. That was just odd. It was the first time I've seen that, from you. So I can see how you could be having a conversation, especially if you're under stress, and then say like one word that's just a little bit different than what you meant?
Yeah, well,
And
sometimes I'll
oh
say
boy.
the exact opposite too.
Oh
That's the other
gosh.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Just
Yeah, I
kidding.
could
That's
say
horrible.
I hate you, but I really meant I love you, right? I mean,
Oh my gosh.
it does get that bad sometimes.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So, and it, it usually is just a different word, or I just try and explain something. I just don't explain it right. That's usually what it is, but it can be completely opposite. And and another thing too, with along with these communication errors, there's the memory thing that gets thrown into it.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's
so
a
when you're having communication errors and memory problems, when you're stressed, you don't remember what you said, and then they think you mean it, and you know it can just get really bad. So the number one tool to stop any of these kind of communication errors in the relationship is to just identify that you love each other, you're with each other, and if you're saying something wrong, you don't mean it. Like, there must be something wrong. It must be a cognitive glitch, is what I like to call it. And, you know, check up with and
mhm,
make sure that that's really what's being said, and why, all those kinds of things. Because you might say, "Did you mean this?" And, I'd respond, "Yes." And I really didn't mean it. Still the same thing, right? But
mhm.
there still doesn't make sense. And I'm still having cognitive glitches. But maybe if you ask, well, why do you feel that way? Then, you know, it's not just a word or a misunderstanding, because bottom line is these communication problems are real. And when you're, when you're not communicating right, that's where all relationships break down, period. Like, all
Mhm.
relationships need communication, good, clear communication to work. So anything you can do to help with your communication, anybody out there in the DVD MedMine that knows of tools to help with communication issues, with people with memory and cognitive issues, that's really great. Um, and another thing on the memory too is, that hurt us early on. For instance, I'll give one example of that. Is she told me about an important um, thing that happened in her life, and it came up again later, where I was supposed to know that and address it in what had happened, and I forgot all about it, and I didn't. And then it got into the conversation. Well, did you remember this about my life? And I'm like, no. And then she just thought I didn't mean anything to her. So very early on in any relationship, it can cause lots of sabotage, and you end up getting ghosted. You don't know why they never talk to you again, because these very simple cognitive glitches, memory problems, or communication problems can cause huge damage in relationships. It's crazy. People are so reactive these days in so many ways.
So,
Um,
hey, so that thing, the big thing that she told you, do
yeah,
you suppose that under the right circumstances, that file would just I mean, if somebody said the right words or something,
yeah,
it would
yeah. If
open that
I
file right up and you'd remember?
Yeah, well, not all the time. Like that one, I completely missed it. Sometimes it
Wow.
literally is one ear and out the other. Because that's the
Yeah,
other thing too, is there's a learning problem that we seem to
yeah.
get too. So your long-term memory is more return there, but anything new, it literally can be in one ear and out the other. So if it
Mhm.
never gets into my memory, then no, it would never be there. And
Yeah.
there are times where I thought I remembered something and it was incorrect, but that's been very few.
Yeah.
Mostly, it seems that those memories are there if they got recorded. Uh,
Mhm.
I just can't access them unless somebody triggers me. But
Yeah.
but they might not say the right thing to trigger it, or my body might be in such a bad position that my brain still says, I'm not going to get that. Forget you. I need to use this energy to keep your heart beating, or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's kind of what I think's going on. Like, the brain's just prioritizing and saying, nope, I'm not going to use energy on that. I have more important things to do.
Yeah.
So I really think that that's what's happening.
I've noticed that living with chronic pain, I mean, I've had chronic pain for, um, I had it in my 20s, and then I had a pretty long break and did some, like, did some things to improve my health that were really drastic changes, and I felt pretty great for several years, uh, and then I had to have surgery, and that surgery just threw me off, and I just didn't recover. But in the meantime, now I forgot what I was saying. Oh, I remember now. Uh, Chronic pain is traumatic enough to
Yeah.
literally make you dissociate. Like, I don't remember yesterday. If somebody
Yeah.
said something, because I was in so much pain, my brain's
Yep.
like, "Oh, hell no, we're not gonna relive that. No, thanks. Let's not think
Exactly.
about that," you know?
And
And I'm glad.
that reminded me another aspect of that. That's something else that she, took problems with it when she didn't understand it was that uh, she has an anger problem, right? And so if I mention she's angry as uh, an
Okay, she don't like to
example,
be told.
she doesn't like to be told that, and it makes her more angry. And she's told me
Yeah,
that, don't tell me I'm angry or I'm going to be more angry. It's like a
yeah,
trigger for her. So
mhm,
if I'm in pain or exhausted, that isn't in the forefront of my mind. Just I don't even think about it at all. Whereas, somebody not in chronic pain or MUCMI, they think of those things, like she thinks of those things. She
yeah,
expects me to, and I'm not. Like that wasn't even there, you know, and
yeah,
and and I could even keep messing up. She would say, like, after the fifth time you should know by now, but no, the pain and the exhaustion, if it's great in the moment, you don't think about anything else. And I
yeah.
try and remind her, hey, remember when you were sitting there with that kidney stone and you know you were screaming out in pain and just wanted to get it fixed, were you thinking about anything else? And she's all, hell no. And I'm all, there you go. Like
Yeah,
that's exactly what it's like. Your brain just is so focused on that problem that it just tosses everything else out the window. That's just how it
yeah,
works. So if
yeah,
somebody expects you to remember those things when you're in chronic pain, it's unfair. It's
yeah.
like, expecting somebody to walk who's paralyzed or whatever, it's just impossible to do, you know.
Exactly. I
And
remember I was reading a book. Um, oh my goodness. Okay, I just had an aha moment. I was reading a book because my ex-fiance, who was an Air Force child who lived in Saudi Arabia, for a big chunk of his childhood. Well, he started having really bad, like, memory problems. I'm sorry, that's not funny, except that I'm only now realizing it. That's so silly to me. Oh my gosh, it's so obvious. So, he oh, this makes me mad, sorry. Now I'm distracted because speaking of relationships, um, so he was having these problems, so I was reading this book and called How to Hug a Porcupine, and it was saying that as soon as you find yourself reacting or angry at all, you stop hearing what the other person is saying. So it is completely fruitless to argue, like completely.
yeah,
There's no remember even I mean, even regardless of any other factors, like two perfectly healthy people cannot will not remember because your memory and your short-term memory and the communication is completely like shut off as soon as adrenaline pumps it, into your
yeah,
brain. So
yeah, that too.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, you go into fight or flight, and when anybody's in that, there a lot of things get shut down just
mhm,
instinctually, and through all of human history, that's we're running away from the tiger, right?
mhm, and we'll
So
remember, like, that one statement in that huge, long argument, that one that cut real deep, you know? But
yeah,
not, but nothing was solved, ever.
right.
When was anything ever solved with people yelling at each other?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, our society is becoming more and more that like everything is, we're being manipulated to be that way. And so you
Mhm.
have that on top of the dysfunction, it just makes it really, really hard.
Yeah.
And, so you have all this dysfunction, and then on top of, the communication and the fights that revolve around that do damage and hurt feelings, and and relationships, depending on how serious it is, or even if it's a serious one, it jeopardizes it, it damages it for the future, and it's easier to break later on, or all
Yeah.
these, on top of all of that, you have the chronic illness going, and everything is just so negative. Like life with MUCMI and chronic pain and all that is very, very negative, and it really actually pisses me off that thiamine could solve a lot of this. It
Mhm.
sounds like it can, which is kind of interesting that I stumbled across that right before this, because if I could not wake up exhausted, I could be a little bit more positive, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is, relationships with people are usually really enjoyable and fun and interesting, and uh you do stuff with them, and that's really all the dynamics of all of it,
Mhm.
and even at work, right? I mean, you got to like who you work with, you got to kind of like what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people are forced to work where they hate, and that's unfortunate, but you know um, you can't hate it, or you're going to end up looking elsewhere, getting fired for getting pissed off, right? But the whole point is if you're having all these problems all the time, nobody wants to be around you. Friends and family that say they love you, they even are tested,
Yeah.
because it's really hard. And if they just had to deal with you and your problems, that would be fine, but everybody else is getting all these growing problems, and so it makes it more and more probable that family and friends are going to ditch you, because you're one giant ball of mess that they can just heap off their shoulders, and they're not going to be as weighed down, right? And that's typically why vets end up going homeless and or suicide. And I really do believe that the VA does know this. um, and they also know that the delay of claims, especially the presumptive denials that they do, which is against the law, by the way, but they still do it.
Mhm.
um, you know, they deny these claims that they're supposed to automatically approve, if all the conditions are met, and they are. And then, my particular case of that happened in 2018. So here it is, 5 years later, almost six, and still nothing. And a lot of financial bad can happen. And as a matter of fact, I've almost been homeless a few times. And if I
Mhm.
was homeless, I probably would be dead,
Yeah.
and uh, because I can't even sleep well on my purple mattress, that is super comfortable. Like
Yeah.
I can't imagine a park bench or concrete, or you
Mhm.
know any of that. Like I don't know how I would survive. So and that's the point is, when you're suffering like that, a lot of vets will take their lives to end that suffering right there.
Mhm.
And that can happen being housed. I can totally see that I deal with a lot of pain, and I'm not there yet, but one or two more things, major things happen. Who knows? I mean, I could be pushed there,
Yeah.
and um, it's all so negative, and all those negative things have impact on relationships. And yeah, I
Yep.
it takes a very special person to stick around anybody with CMI, and most people with CMI are alone. And
Hmm.
it's almost like CMI people should start their own dating app or something. You know what I mean? Because
There is one.
oh, there is.
Yeah, I forgot years ago.
That's
I
funny.
found one, and then I was going through old emails yesterday, and
But
I
that's
saw
the thing
these
too.
emails from it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
That's
That
the thing
was
too, though. If you get somebody else with CMI, then you have two sets of problems happening 24/7. So
Yeah,
that
but
that
do you know
might
what
not be
though? It would
what.
suck. It would suck, but at the same time, it's like, well, at least they're gonna know not to expect anything. Um,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I'm almost like my son asked me, why don't you just, go find somebody? You could be with anybody you want. And I'm like, well, because I would be a terrible girlfriend. I'm like terrible. I mean, I would probably be a good wife, but I would not be a very good girlfriend because I'm not gonna leave the freaking house. I'm like, well, if
Yeah.
you want to come over and have we'll make like something really fast and do the dishes tomorrow. You know, like that's like it.
You there?
Watch some, yeah.
Oh shoot. What happened? I lost my volume here.
Hmm.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Anyway, oh, I hope that worked.
Sneeze my volume off. Just another
Oh,
muck me day, I guess.
yeah. Well,
So,
anyway,
yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrupt what you were saying there.
well, that's okay. That is okay.
You're done?
Yeah, I don't even, yeah.
All right. So let's see here. So yeah, all those problems with MUCMIs cause problems in the relationship, such as feeling betrayed and not heard, and you lose hope in any relief. Uh, with MUCMI, and that can be really difficult to just kind of go through life that way, constantly. So that, provides strain on your partner when they know you're feeling like that a lot of the time. And then all the difficulties in life caused by MUCMI. Um, so we didn't go too much into that. So let's talk about that for a sec. There's doctor's appointments all the time. There's things that you can't do that other people can do depending on what's going on with you. Um, you're almost literally on call 24/7, 365 for visiting the emergency room. Um, that can happen at any moment in time.
Hmm.
Um, what else does it cause and problems with relationships? Anything you can think of? Well, I think of a few more.
Um, yeah, just that, being sick makes you, it is a full-time job to be sick.
It is.
And when you can't be having a job. So it's
Right.
like, I mean, like I'll go weeks without getting my mail because it's 200 yards away. Because I became a fall risk. So now I have in-home physical therapy to help me not fall so that I can take my garbage out by myself. And
Yeah.
stuff I've been doing my whole life. It's just the yeah, so it's just and I'm not going to call someone else and say, "Hey, can you go get my mail?" No. I'm not 80, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like I refuse to accept it about myself, and that's a huge stress too. And then I think like oh my gosh, I have this many, most people don't feel this bad until they're like, I don't know if they ever do with like most people, but like in their 80s or something, right? Maybe 90s.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that though. I mean, but
Yeah,
and I
there
think
is
like,
a
why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? What's the
there is
point?
an end of life and then there's a end of quality of life, which are two different things. And the goal
Yeah.
is to have your quality of life end around the same time as your end of life. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
with toxic exposures, that is impossible. You're going to be suffering like crazy until you die. Um, is the way that it looks like, which is why
mhm,
we have to put an end to it. You know.
not
Um,
life to the
yeah,
toxic
exactly. Put an end to the toxic exposure. Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know that. Um, Otherwise, the FBI is going to be like showing up at the door, right? Because they don't understand that. See, and that's a
A death
communication
threat.
glitch, right?
Wait, was
Like,
that a suicide threat?
glad you thought that. Um,
Right.
and that's really the thing is, we on top of all the stresses of everything that we've just talked about, you have the additional stresses that authorities don't know how to
Oh,
deal with this.
oh my
Uh,
gosh.
my social security disability is I'm still fighting that. I finally got a hearing date.
Oh, good.
Finally, after it's like been 4 years of fighting them.
Wow.
Um, and it's a couple months for the hearing. But the problem is on the books, on the actual books that they don't let people see, the doctor's notebooks where they all, make fun of us when we're not looking, um, is that, this is not real. This toxic exposure thing. If the toxin didn't take you out or, you know, cause problems with one of your organs when it happened, then you have mental illness. And the problem is, when you take your girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse to these appointments and they're saying that, but yet the real life of your everyday existence is completely different, you know, they start going, hey, how much of this is real? How much of this is fake?
Mm,
And, that causes additional strain in relationships. I bet that the VA is responsible for thousands and thousands of divorces because of just that alone.
mhm,
Where the spouse is in there and they're kind of, gaslighting and saying, well, there's nothing really, you're pretty healthy and there's no real cure for this. So, what's your biggest complaint? What's going wrong with you? And that's actually what they did to me in front of my spouse. When they said that they were going to help me, that the very first question was in that meeting was, what's your biggest complaint of what's going wrong with you right now? And I told him my brain, right? Which is
mhm.
kind of, it's all in my head kind of thing, right?
Oh, great.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
But I mentioned, the brain damage, the hemorrhaging, the white and gray matter loss, the dysautonomia I've been diagnosed with that is also in that thiamine thing, by the way.
Oh,
Uh,
really? Because I have that
yeah.
too.
Oh, and it doesn't, I'm sorry, it doesn't cure ALS. It stops ALS from progressing and cures the symptoms,
Uh-huh.
but they have to stay on it.
So
Uh,
in other words, it's a deficiency. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, exactly. So that's what these
Wow.
pathways do, and they actually really, I'm so excited about how thiamine could actually help because it's non-toxic. It doesn't cause any side effects or problems. I don't think. I still am um, learning about it, so there may be some, but it sounds like you just get 2 injections a week and then you're good. Like all the progression stopping and you're feeling more energy and you're not as exhausted and a
Mhm.
lot of dysfunction in your body starts working again.
There's a Facebook group for with people who have that genetic defect thing, or not defect, genetic variant that
Where thiamine doesn't work well.
yeah, or I think it's actually a mitochondrial dysfunction, but then the people in the group are using B1 to treat
Yeah.
it, and it's
Well,
working,
yeah,
and it's
it does help.
huge
Yeah.
doses, yeah,
Yeah, it does help protect the mitochondria too, which,
yeah,
we have an energy disease is what they're saying.
mhm,
Uh, and really that's what's happening to everybody. It's all energy disease, which is why, all the obesity, everything all ties into this same general pathway. And
mhm,
and that really, I do think that that's why the Gulf War illness is a lot like long COVID and everything else.
mhm,
Uh, ME, CFS, all that stuff is all these same general breakdowns in the body. And they are caused by different things, so they end up doing a little different. And then the genetics of somebody, whether they're weak against it or strong against it, can have different outcomes. So there's a lot of variables in there, but that makes it all the perfect crime and why they've been able to cover it up. Oh, and a key feature of this too is none of this shows up in labs, but they know this.
yeah,
They know this.
well,
This is old science. That
uh-huh,
this is happening at a cellular level.
yeah, and they
So
know how to check it with the muscle
exactly.
biopsy, but they
Yeah,
don't do the muscle biopsy, and they won't tell you that they can. You have to find it
and
out on
it's all
Google.
been hidden. It's all been oddly hidden.
Uh-huh,
But the reason why I'm going into more detail about all that is on this very subject of where we're told it's in our head. They know this stuff. It's not
mhm,
mystery. They actually call it unexplained, medically unexplained stuff. You know,
mhm, mhm,
MUCMI is medically unexplained chronic multi-symptom illness, but anything CMI is considered like you're just a mental case. And I don't understand how such a very researched and very simple and effective and cheap cure for so many diseases, and not even necessarily a cure, but um,
a
I
solution,
used the wrong word. Yeah, solution. So
something,
in
yeah,
some of them, it can cure ALS. It can't cure. It can stop it from progressing.
mhm,
But that's better than any drug that exists.
yeah,
No other drug can stop ALS.
yeah,
So, and this isn't even a drug we're talking about. It's a vitamin.
mhm,
So it's just unbelievable how it can be covered up in such a way. We have more and more stuff hitting these pathways that generate these symptoms and disease, and then we're the ones called crazy. It's
mhm,
just we're literally on the front lines of this fight, is what it is, and it's all connected.
yeah,
It totally is connected, and it's not connected in ways that you can readily see. It's connected through all these similarities of medicine. And you know when I noticed that long COVID seemed to have a lot of the symptoms of Gulf War illness, people thought I was crazy that they're related, but they attack that same pathway.
uh-huh,
So the body is a amazing healing machine given the right environment and nutrients and oxygen.
mhm.
And they're throwing a wrench in the whole works. That's all they're doing.
This
And it,
this is interesting. That's exactly what I thought when I heard that COVID was actually when people were in the hospital with COVID, they'd start to get better, and then they would die. And I was like, it's a cytokine storm, which is exactly what my body does every day.
yeah.
So I have to take ridiculous amounts of medication to slow my cytokine storms and my mast cell activation. And because my immune system is just going crazy trying to fight well, fight whatever, toxins.
Probably the leaky gut. So
Yeah, yeah, that's
so a
kinda what
lot
I
of
think
this
too.
Yeah, a lot of this is happens through the gut breakdown.
Yeah.
It can
So,
happen in other ways,
mhm,
but even if it happens in other ways, it does end up affecting the gut. And then when it
mhm.
affects the gut, that's where it starts following this same general thing. And then
Yeah.
you get the brain fog and,
Mhm. Yeah.
nutrient absorption, and it just turns all into this negative feedback cycle. But it
You
is
get
all generally the same root thing.
Yeah, so
And
you
that's,
get inflammation. You get inflammation
yeah.
everywhere, and then once you have inflammation, there's nothing going right,
Yeah. Well, the
you
main
know?
thing is your fight and flight gets stuck in that
Mhm.
position
Yeah.
even when you're sleeping, and then you can never heal. When you're in
Yeah.
fight or flight, you can never heal and you never digest well, which is why the digestive problems get worse and worse, is because you have, food rotting in your intestines for a long time before it actually comes out.
Yeah.
And that
Or
that
leaking through the
happens with
walls, and
most. Well, it's leaking through the walls while it does that too.
mhm.
As it gets worse and worse, it's more toxic, as it's
Yeah.
rotten in there. So,
The
those are the main mechanisms,
So when they
that
said
they.
sorry, when they said I was gonna finish the thing about the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
hospital.
yeah.
So when they were saying that people in the hospital, were getting this, and I was like, "It's a cytokine storm. They know how to treat that. That just give them the same medicines I'm taking. It's not hard to stop." And they were acting like it was this big, like, mystery. Like, that is not a mystery.
Yeah,
It's
and see,
easy to stop your mast cells from going crazy. Easy,
that's
especially when
what's
you're in the
so.
ICU, you
Yeah,
know?
that's what's so nefarious about some of this stuff, is that
Mhm.
they do know these things,
Yeah.
and then they're pretending that they don't. And
Yeah.
you
Just
know
to
and
upset
and it ties
everyone.
in, the suffering it causes, health problems and relationship problems, and
Mhm.
everybody's at each other's throats, and families are getting broken up everywhere, and more people are suiciding, and more people are having disease. And
Mhm.
it's a never ending cycle, and we do have to talk about it, we do have to address it, and that's what we're trying to do here,
Yeah.
is to bring that conversation out. Um,
Yeah.
let's see here. Let's move on to the next thing here. I think we covered all that.
Mhm.
Providers not taking it seriously, calling it mental health, and from our families, loved ones. We covered that. System in general not set up to alleviate pressures of finance, uh, or education on the problems that are generated from the illness, like helping families know what to expect, that you're going to have communication problems, and it might,
Yeah.
cause problems in your relationship. They don't help you with any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Medically unex. Oh wait, sorry, I skipped something. Problems caused by denial of illness and unknown effects of illness due to not getting help. Um,
Mhm.
I think that's actually got nothing to do with relationships, huh? That is, let's see here.
Well, it can, but
Denial of illness. Oh, I know what I'm trying to say there. Yeah, so if you're in denial about having the illness and somebody sees it, or you have the illness and they hear your provider saying it's not real, that can cause further problems in the relationship. Um, and it prevents you from getting care. Uh, Now, the problem with getting care in general is there's no medical anything is going to help us with any of this, because they all call it mental illness. The
mhm.
the things that they are helping with is the medical emergencies, like if you have a heart attack or a stroke, or your intestines get blocked, or any of these major events that happen, organ failures, things like that. They will
Mhm.
help us with those and treat them individually as those things, as no cause or your lifestyle. They'll blame it on everything else other than this whole breakdown of the body. And we hope that that changes too. All this information's coming out. Um,
I
but
have a question.
yeah.
This is a little off topic, but it just keeps going through my head. So they know, for example, one of over 100 exposures was sarin gas, right? They know this.
Yes.
So, so how? So they're saying that sarin. So, like, if they gave everybody sarin in America and we all got sick, they would call it mental illness.
Um,
It's freaking
so,
ridiculous.
well, no. So what they're saying with that, I think, well, first off, they were lying that it even happened. So they said it didn't even happen. They're calling it mental illness for years.
But it
And
came out
then
that
they
there
were
was.
forced, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
5 years later or so, they were forced to admit that there was.
Mm-hmm.
When they did that, they tried to narrow it down to just the people who had already died that were closer to the demolition.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And
Okay.
then we were saying like, no, no, it's all these other people that mixed with the sand, or first went through the air with the
Mm-hmm.
weather patterns. They did a study on that and they said, oh, it affected a lot more vets, the other ones that subsequently died, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they actually sent letters to a bunch of vets in these zones, but they were all very close to the blast. They just kept making the circle of the blast bigger or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
they said with the weather patterns, they were going up into Iran, not down towards us, but they got debunked on that. And then they had to admit it's more. So
Mm-hmm.
now they say, I don't know what the final number was. I think 50,000 or something. But they're saying that's it. It's just from the air. They didn't count the stuff that fell on the sarin and then or sand and then blew all around with the
Yeah,
sandstorms.
for the
They're
whole time you're
completely
there.
discarding that, even though they had a major study right before the Gulf War about how our whole military is very susceptible to dusty agents, which is what that is when you mix the
Yeah.
chemical with dust,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially what the sand is there. It's the finest sand in the world.
And you wonder why your
Um,
lungs are.
yeah, that's why my exposure, I believe the majority of the exposure that made me sick was through my lungs with
Mm-hmm.
fuel and sarin sand. And
And the volcano probably didn't help either,
yeah,
huh?
maybe that too. But the thing is they keep they they kind of the whole medical world, any doctor that you talk to kind of says, poisons are poison. If you were poisoned and you didn't die, you didn't really get that poisoned,
Mm.
is the whole idea. But, you know, that's just the general group think, I think, is what they're trying to say there. So
Yeah.
so when you go present yourself to any doctor and say, hey, I was in the Gulf and sarin was admitted and blah blah blah, they go, oh, you must not have been hit with the sarin because you didn't die.
Yeah,
So I'm going to exclude that, right?
that is what I want in this whole thing, for there to be enough posts of people saying, "Yeah, I have that. Yeah, I have that. I have that. I have that," because nobody's doing that yet. I mean, except in your group and things like that. But to have a huge, like, a database of one person or one post about I was I was there at this time, this is what's happening with my lungs, and this is, and then somebody comes on and says, "Oh, well, just so happens that if this happens to your lungs, then it affects this system." And then next thing you know, you have a syndrome, right? Just
Yeah.
created on a post because
Well,
hundreds of
what's
people
crazy about
respond.
that is we
What?
do have that in the history of the groups, like the
Mhm.
30-year history of the Facebook groups or 20 years, however long they've been.
Oh, wow, I didn't
Um,
know it was that long.
yeah,
That's great.
I think it's 20 years, not 30.
Mhm.
So the 20 years of Facebook groups, there is a lot of that. Of course, it isn't in a
Mhm.
centralized database that you can see all you can't just look them all up. Um,
Mhm.
but also, in addition to that, the VA has a GWI cohort study where they've examined like 3,000 vets or something like that
Hmm.
for the past 30 years, and every 10 years they do an update on it, and their health has all been the same, generally the same, and getting worse.
Oh my
And
gosh.
um, so they've
Where
been
can we
doing
do
that, and
that?
the next one's actually due at the end of this year. They're going to do a new one.
Oh boy.
It's called the GWI cohort
Cohort.
study, COHORT, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but on top of that, the VA itself has its own registry for Gulf War and burn pits and everything. They have their own registries. The problem with the registries are there's been a lot of participation in them. Um, Probably not as much as should be, but there's been a lot. But they
Yeah.
keep it all to themselves. They're not
Yeah.
sharing that information with anybody, and they're citing HIPAA. But the thing is they could remove the names of everybody and just put conditions and stuff,
Hmm.
and they could share it that way. And they won't even do that. They don't track deaths. They don't. They're doing
What?
everything that they can to cover this up and hide everything.
Yeah. And the fact that they're the ones doing these reports, I don't even trust it. I mean, it'll probably show a lot, but it's not going to show even close to
Yeah.
reality, I believe.
Well, and the thing is, though, is if these were made public, even just to the researchers, they could hone in more to help
Hmm.
us, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so it harms us in so many ways. All these cover-ups, and
Hmm.
especially they've known a lot of this stuff for a long time, thyme and all that. If we got thyme and treatments early on, we might have cured things, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be getting worse. Imagine, you know.
Yeah, I would love to feel like I felt even 10 years ago,
Yeah.
even if they
Yeah.
started 10 years ago. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, all of this, though, all this malfeasance and uh, bad stuff that's happened to us, all the lies, as we suffer, as we go to the doctor and we don't get help, we get made fun of. And sometimes you can actually witness or be part of that being made fun of, right? You can hear them around the corner laughing about you, or, you
Hmm.
know, I mean, people are assholes,
I
and
know.
especially doctors that think they know everything, and you're presenting them with a bunch of stuff they have no idea with,
Oh, they
and
do
they
not
get,
do well. Yes, they do
yeah,
not
and
do well with that.
they start freaking out. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah, they do not
Um,
like that.
Well, and I think I know why is because, there are a lot of doctors that are sick of the sick care system. They want to help
Hmm.
people, and they know, passionate doctors that want to heal, they do know what system they're participating in. And the good news is a lot of them are breaking out from that. And that's
Yeah.
important because all of this stuff helps relationships. Relationship help starts at the provider of chronic illness, period.
Mm.
Especially since so many of us don't even know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, you know, need that extra help.
Yeah.
And it's just shameful that the things are this way. So
I attend a chronic illness support group via Zoom, and I'm thinking, how hard would it be for the VA to sponsor something like that? Well, why would they want to go and do that?
yeah.
Have everybody get together and talk about how they all have the same symptoms when they were in the same locations?
Yeah,
Like,
they
yeah,
don't want
no,
us.
no thanks.
They didn't expect us to have Facebook groups and all that after all
I know.
this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and they do seem to have contractors or whoever in there disrupting things,
Mhm.
and turning us all against each other in various ways. I've witnessed some of
Mhm.
that
Me
stuff.
too. Yeah.
Um, so let's see here. What else we got here? Problems caused by denial of illness. Okay, we covered that.
We're
Medically unexplained and not understood disabilities in our illness makes it look like we're lying or faking or otherwise being nefarious. This causes relationship issues for many of us. Even if it doesn't create a relationship issue, it creates a trust issue possibly, and our relationship is impacted from that point, right? It's kind of like it damages the armor, and it's just one of those things where the next thing that happens, they're going to go, oh, and they're going to think you're a bad person when you're not. Um, let's see
yeah,
here. I think we covered most of that stuff.
yeah.
Step one, providers say mental illness. Who does family believe? We covered that. Step two, something happens where we are misunderstood or having dysfunction due to our illness and how it affects the brain. I think, oh, so yeah, I never feel like I'm heard because I don't go to the doctor, I don't get help.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and when you do,
and
you
that
don't get help too.
causes problems with the relationships too, because when my partner doesn't seem like they're listening or helping, I lump them in with all that yuck. My
Hmm.
brain just views them as the enemy, and I know that it does that. It's like my survival, subconscious mind. It's not my conscious mind that does that. And I
Hmm.
imagine there's probably some vets out there that haven't noticed that. And I noticed I was sabotaging some relationships to get out of bad situations without even knowing it.
Yeah,
Um, so that's kind of what I was saying there.
yeah.
Um,
I remember that we wanted to talk about the definitions of emotions.
Yep,
Um,
that's
be,
actually a few down the list, but since you mentioned it,
okay,
let's tackle it now.
all right. I took a class that was actually really helpful for me. Didn't help in my marriage because he didn't want to use it. He was happy with the chaos, and I was not. So, but the class taught us that if we view anger, if we define anger as feeling unrecognized or unheard, that takes all of the negativity out of it. I mean, you can even be angry at God if that is what you're feeling, unrecognized or unheard. You can say, I mean, all the things that anger has so much shame and guilt, and, everything is related. Everything is so tied up in that word anger. But it's really something we all experience every single day. It's the fear of confronting it and facing it that causes so many problems. So if we say, I feel unrecognized, or I feel like maybe you didn't hear me, um, I'm feeling unheard, then the person can respond to what, oh, this is what I meant. Do you feel heard now? Instead of even anger even getting brought up. But we can also just try to adjust to not react to the word anger so negatively. Sadness is a feeling of loss. Um, what else? Well, those are the negative emotions that I can think of. Can you think of another negative emotion that goes along with this? And then I'll tell you what the definitions they gave were.
Happy,
Happy. Happiness is feelings of well-being
well-being.
and satisfaction, things like that.
Yeah, see, everybody wants to just feel good and not have a lot of troubles, and
Hmm.
all of that's just being heaped on everybody,
Yeah.
and that makes it very hard for MUCMI and CMI patients because you know we're at the even farther bottom of the stack, right? We were already at the bottom of the stack in the social world, and now
Yeah.
we're even farther away from it because we're like we're an opposite magnet, right? We repel everybody,
Yeah.
and because they just want, they're going through their own problems, and everybody's increasingly um, suffering from their own toxic illness through the
Mhm.
food and water supply alone, and now air too.
And the
Those three
blood-borne air.
vectors are becoming more and more. Well, actually, through the skin with products too. Any product that you touch, it can
Mhm.
happen skin, food, or skin, mouth, and ingestion,
Yeah.
uh, or breathing. And so, uh, as everybody's getting more and more dosed up with everything, uh, you know, that's creating problems with everybody. And so everybody's starting to have these issues and not even understand what's going on with them. Can you imagine that how many people out there have these really serious cognitive issues and they don't even know it yet? Because you don't know it when you have it.
Yeah.
I never once thought I had any issue wrong with my mind until I had cognitive testing in 2018 and got told exactly what was wrong. And then when I
Yeah.
got told exactly what was wrong, I was all those surprise things that happened in my life that I didn't understand. Um, Now I actually understand them.
Mhm.
So if
That's
you're
probably
having a
kind of
lot of
validating, you know? I mean, as terrible as the news is, it's
yeah,
better to
yeah,
have that news because at least then you aren't living in a constant state of feeling unheard and unrecognized,
exactly.
you
And I
know?
actually thought that would solve all the relationship problems between me and my wife, but it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's still challenges beyond knowing what's going on. You have to, there's a lot of other things, and she has her own toxic illness. She grew up around crops where she's inhaling pesticides when
Yeah.
they started using them, and her illness is very similar to mine in a lot of ways, but it happens different in females versus males, and uh, she's also, because it was packed in with other exposures that she's had. Beyond that, she has some different things, much different things going on than me, and
Mhm.
not a lot of the same things I have, which is nice. I'm glad she doesn't have most of that.
Yeah.
But she is suffering in her own ways, and one disease is hard, and multiple diseases are even harder. And so many more of us are experiencing that now that, you know, with healthcare costs rising and with science getting so good, uh, it's cleared, and all the cover ups and lies going on about these exact illnesses and what they are, even. Uh, is just ongoing proof that the corruption at the top just seems to want to get rid of us. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't see any other logical explanation for what's going on.
No, there
Uh,
is none, yeah, there's none.
you, they make money off of us. People say, well, it's all about money, and it is. I mean, that's what has got us here now. But that's the thing. You know, People can't just keep looking at things in individualized chunks. You
Yeah.
have a whole history here, right? If the
Mhm.
people realize what's been happening to them because of profit, where things have, where the runaway train is on the track, if they actually knew that the corrupt at the top know that the pitchforks and torches are coming, right? So
Mhm.
their their best interest is going to be to keep covering it up, and that's the thing about lies and problems is you just have to keep doing it to cover up for what you did, and keep doing another crime to keep from getting caught. It just keeps going and going and going until it stops or it does all the damage it can, and it's going to continue doing all the damage it can. In this case, there is no proverbial wall. The proverbial wall is when there's no life left on this planet. That's when that wall is, and nobody will be around to realize what happened. So
Mhm. You know what
we
I
got to
just
stop it.
realized? You know what I just
What?
realized? Um, that when when my health took a major decline when I was in my 20s. I had been in California's Central Valley, the agricultural capital of the world at the time.
Yeah.
I'd been there for, let's see here. I started getting really, really sick about 1992, and I moved there in 1990.
Oh, wow.
I didn't take very long. Um, and so yeah, so as you were talking about your wife living in, in Bakersfield, like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't
Wow.
grow up
So
with
you,
it, but it sure didn't take very long for me to get very, very sick when had, I was actually very healthy. I mean,
well,
for
that's when they really started doing it is after 91. When we all didn't drop dead like flies, I think that's when they gave the red light. Or I
the green light.
see,
See, the
I caught it.
opposite.
I caught it that time. I
The
caught it that
opposite,
time. Sometimes I don't
literally.
catch it, but I realized it that time. So
That's
anyway,
funny. Interesting.
um, yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's when the green light happened, I believe, for all of this because they
Like
knew it was the
Roundup.
perfect crime. They knew, yeah, Roundup went into full
Hmm.
effect. More pesticides got approved.
Oh
The
my gosh.
CDC's spike in illness uh, just goes up exponentially in 95 for everything across the board. That's another
Wow.
big piece of info is, you
Hmm.
know, everything, neurological diseases, cancers, obesity, diabetes, all these same things started
Hmm.
exponentially increasing in 95. That's because they had already implemented much of it. It was used, but in smaller, much smaller scale. But that's when they gave the blanket approval to start using it everywhere. And boy, did it just quickly during the 90s switched our whole, way of farming and everything switched. And
Wow. To think that at the time, I believe it was still 80% of the world's produce was grown in California's San Joaquin Valley,
wow.
which means not only were we breathing it if we lived there, but the produce was going all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I think they've taken a lot of it offshore and most of the food's imported
Hmm.
now.
Yeah,
Um,
it's nowhere near that now. Yeah. I
and they've really been
yeah.
attacking the farmers, and Bill
Hmm.
Gates bought a bunch of farmland, and it's really, I mean, the whole food supply needs to be completely changed because it is not providing the nutrition. The nutrients have been stripped out, and chemicals have been put in like crazy, and
Hmm.
that is what's causing these disease spikes. There's no doubt about it. And I really
Yeah.
can't believe that experts around the world, so-called experts, that have platforms and voices aren't like singing and screaming from the highest towers.
They don't
Because
last long.
yeah, and we're gonna get attacked too,
Yeah,
and
that's all
we
right. It's
hardly
worth
have
it.
anybody here, so we're
Yeah.
obviously shadow banned, and
Yeah, I know.
this. So what I'm going to be doing too, just to help with that, is, um, the spaces is. Oh, I hope I did record it. Maybe I did, but
Oh
regardless
gosh.
of, maybe I didn't. But the thing is, though, is I'm recording it this time,
Hmm.
and I'm doing it in a format that I can just easily upload it to YouTube. And so the Discarded Vet Doc YouTube. By the way, that was another announcement that I missed. Is uh, the YouTube channel is Discarded Vet Doc.
All
Uh,
right.
you actually go to youtube.com/discarded vet doc, and or the at symbol, I think, is what you have to use. But anyway,
Hmm.
that we got the URL and everything, which is amazing because I don't know how that happened, but it just did.
Awesome.
So,
That's
um,
fantastic.
yeah, so I'm gonna post this directly to there, and then post start posting links in Facebook because apparently, for some reason, a lot of vets in our groups don't want to use Twitter/X.
Yeah.
So that goes contrary against the mainstream media that all vets support Musk and stuff. But I think vets know. I think they know who the enemies are. As far as who wants to help us and who doesn't. And billionaires isn't on that list for most of us. So uh,
Exactly.
he better he better do a lot more for us before he expects us to support him. I think.
Yeah. Hmm.
But I'm doing that, and you know the just to wrap up what I want to say about relationships, I think uh, is the first thing that you need to do is make sure that your friends and family know that something's wrong with you, like seriously wrong with you, and it's an invisible thing. Like a lot of people can't see it unless you're as bad off as I am. You can see it at this point,
Hmm.
uh, but even if you can see sickness or whatever, you don't know necessarily what that means. So it's important that you tell your family like how things impact you and be honest and upfront, because if you don't, that's how you're going to lose them. And you need that support. You need your family. If you're alone, I don't know how anybody can do this alone. It's so difficult.
Well,
I can completely see why vets suicide in those cases, when they're left all alone, and especially homeless too. It's so
yeah.
preventable, and a lot of us are in the same boat too. So a lot of other people are going to be experiencing these issues, and they have to understand that you know they might be hearing things wrong, they might be saying things wrong, they might not be remembering something. Um, and so vets need to be mindful of that with their spouses. Is they are starting to have these cognitive issues as well, and we really need to come together as humanity, because we are being attacked. We're under attack, and it's so crazy that the world just keeps going on like everything's normal, because it's not.
No. No,
So
I think now maybe I just live in an isolated world now with the only people I choose to communicate with are people who I consider I'm not going to say woke, awake to the realities of things,
right,
and instead of being a
yeah, they even
conspiracy
make woke
theorist that
mad
I
because like
know. It's like
hello, it's you want to be brainwashed or awake? Yes, you want to be awake. Don't make fun of it, right? Like it's so
yeah.
dumb. Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I noticed someone today online whose name on I don't remember what social media platform it was a conspiracy realist. I thought it was so fantastic because it, things that used to be conspiracy theories are now totally proven, and
Yeah,
things that were
they're
conspiracy
inactive.
theories like 2 years ago are now very getting pretty darn clear that they were absolutely planned. And then and the times are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Like they're they're not very sneaky.
Yeah, they're not
I
hiding
mean,
anything now.
no, they're kind of just like, here it is, right out and open, and then they're probably just laughing, going
Yeah.
like, "Ha ha!" Like, look at they're still like fighting over it. They're just shaking the jar. You know.
Yep. And for those that don't know what shaking the jar is, basically if you get red ants and black ants, I think, in a
Mhm.
jar, and leave them there, they're fine usually. But the minute you shake the jar, they all start going to war. And
Yeah.
so shaking the jar is literally what's happening to a lot of us citizens against each other.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean they're not hiding it. They're lying out in the open. PACT Act is not saving any of us. It's just another stalled budget mitigation tactic. The clinical guidelines haven't changed. And
Yeah.
we probably do need to end soon
Mhm.
here, Toxie. So let me just
Mhm.
finish my wrap up of what I
Yeah.
think is important with the relationships and
Mhm.
these illnesses, and then you do it. We'll wrap it up.
Agreed.
Um, so yeah, I mean the most important thing is to realize we're all in this together. It is happening to all of us. It isn't just Gulf War vets. We are the long-term studies, not the only studies.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't want to end up like us. A lot of you already are. Uh, I do believe that whatever happened to us was the beginnings of what is happening to everybody else. We were the
Mhm.
beta test, so to speak.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. Uh, and we need each other as a people more than ever. So these relationships are very important. And, you know, the destruction of families, the destruction of communities, all of that stuff has been done to disempower us and weaken us for the kill shot that's coming, is really what I think. And, I do have a very alerting threat detector brain that almost seems to see things into the future,
Mhm.
not in a vivid like movie display of exactly what's going to happen, but I get feelings and I
Yeah.
get ideas of things. Sometimes things do pop into my head, like, you know, watch out in this area, or just, and it's usually just synchronicity type stuff that happens, that
Really
even
good
somebody else is
synchronicities.
talking and about
Mhm.
something. I go, oh wow, yeah, I need to watch out for this, and
Mhm.
then I start looking at it and researching into it, and I'm all, oh yeah, this is a real threat. I find out more about it that way. But I really do think that we are on a verge of a World War III-ish scenario that's probably already in progress more than we realize. I think that
Mhm.
we're in very serious jeopardy of a economic slash food disruption
Yeah.
that could occur any day.
Mhm.
Uh, I I do believe that we are under attack, and I think that we need to get together as quickly as possible to figure something out,
Mhm.
because if we don't, we have no chance. And even if we do, we might not have a chance because they have all the technology, resources, AI, they have it all. They have the WMD, they have the bio labs and everything else.
The
So
FBI airplanes.
yeah, and the FBI airplanes, yep.
Ooh.
So I
Yeah.
mean, the news is just
Look
getting
that
so
one up.
ridiculous. I mean, it's even aliens
Yeah.
in Congress and everything. Like it's
Oh my
so
gosh.
crazy.
Ugh.
But yeah, I just think that relationships are important, and especially your closest ones. And so you just need to make sure that you're not in denial. That you wake up to what's going on with you vets out there, because you've been told so long that nothing's wrong with you, or it's in your head, or it's just your age, or it's your genetics, or your lifestyle, and all these other things. And that is just not true. Yes, those things do contribute. And if you have strong genes, they contribute in a good way to help you.
Well,
But, but,
sometimes.
or if you have a good lifestyle, it's going to help you, you know,
Mhm.
uh, at least slow down your decline.
I
But you
I
have to,
believe I think they chose some very strong gene people with strong genes. Um, I think I've told you this before. You've told me this before too, probably. But yeah, I
I'm
think
not remembering.
they chose some people with very strong genes to experiment extra specially on.
Oh yeah,
um,
I think I'm
yeah,
one of those. Yeah, I think I have
yeah,
told you that.
yeah.
Yep, I think I'm one of those control
So
groups, I guess you could say.
yeah,
Uh,
nice strong immune response. So much so that you know.
That I have zombie organs.
Yeah.
That's what Zach calls them, zombie
Oh my
organs.
gosh, that's great.
He's so funny. All right, so yeah, I mean that's basically it. I guess is just we have to fix our relationships, and I know so many of us have. I mean, I see the posts all the time in the private groups about people just not understanding what's happening to them. Their lives are ruined. Their wife leaves with the kids, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. Um, it just it's probably because of these things that you don't even know about. So get your cognitive testing done. Um, the VA does help with some things, and I think they can help with that. I think one of the reasons why they do the right thing there is because they put it all towards mental, and then they use these cognitive defects, uh, you know, against you as far as they're saying that that's what's causing all your problems.
Hmm.
But at least, I mean, there is ratings for that too. If you're having problems with ratings, uh, cog cognitive stuff can go up to 100, like PTSD. 100 is what they gave a lot of people, and that's a whole separate issue of why they did that. Another scam thing, but they just kind of lump every brain damage thing into PTSD. Uh,
Yeah.
there is real PTSD, and then there's like brain damage causing a bunch of stuff that they don't know about, or they know
Hmm.
about, and they're just not sharing it with the medical world. But
Yeah.
um, that's the thing with a lot of this toxic exposure is it's not that the damage isn't there. It's a new Parkinson's type thing, or it's a new, it's a completely new thing that isn't defined. And I think the reason why it hasn't ever been defined is they're blocking that from happening. Number
Yeah, because
one,
they're doing it
and
on purpose. That's
yeah, and number two on top of that is we have so many little different things going on. There's different types of damages that you can't really call it one thing either.
hmm.
It would have to be like several versions of Gulf War illness, for instance,
Yeah.
which would include long COVID. Long COVID would be one of those types of Gulf War illness. So,
Yeah.
in my view, but that's all I want to say about it is we just have to realize what's going on, realize that there is dysfunction going on in our bodies, that it's difficult, and we need to prepare our family members or any new people we meet. We need to prepare them for what they're getting into, and that can prevent a lot of heartache too, right? Because if the person that you're meeting isn't going to deal with you with MUCMI, then better to realize that off the start than you know maybe get into a relationship and then later find out that they're not going to deal with any of that, and then they
Yeah.
leave. So
Yeah.
that's my final thoughts on all that. What about you, Toxie?
I would say that well, from my personal experience with my family, that um if you need help, ask, um and if it becomes too much, tell them to tell you. And then don't react. I mean, if you need help, you need help. It's interesting how people will help really happily, but then it just seems like they're not happy to help. But then when they actually do, it's like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, they're being so like pay attention how people react when they're helping you because it feels terrible to ask, but when they do, there are many times where they're finding a lot of joy in it. So when those times happen, remember them, like, pay attention to them, maybe even write them down. I mean, uh, learn I'm learning this myself as I'm speaking. And then, another thing is, when there's this much stress in a relationship, maybe one thing you could do, or I think would be helpful for me specifically, is just sit down, have eye contact, 10 minutes a day. That's all. Just sit down, no devices, no TV, nothing. Just sit down and talk. Eye contact, preferably, if you're a touchy person, have your, hold hands or something. Um, and then also you know, the things like learning the person's love language, learning your love language. Those are, if you don't know what those are, you probably know what those are. Um, but you can look it up. Also, the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory Test has been hugely influential for me understanding myself and others and my relationship to others. Um, I'm I'm an INFJ, which is really rare, and it explains pretty much every problem in my life. um, but it also it comes with some really cool stuff, and other INFJs I really, really get. So when I feel alone, I know that if I turn to other INFJs, and there are groups of them online, I will feel understood and I will no longer feel alone because they think the same way and are motivated the same way. So that's one, I think is really good for relationships too. If you know each other's personality types, um, then you can learn what motivates the other person. It just makes it's like having a instruction manual or something on the other person because we can't be expected to just understand each other. You know, we just assume everyone else is going to think similarly to us, and we simply don't. We don't think alike, not even close. So that's
Yeah, I've
that's it.
learned that lesson is a hard lesson, actually.
Yeah,
I,
I
I
think
used
I
to
think
think,
you're probably the INFJ too, right? Like we're very
well,
similar.
yeah, but also learning that other people don't think like me. Like
Yeah,
I just thought that most people thought very similar to me, or at least kind of like, a lot of the things, but not
yeah.
even
No,
close.
no. I think that's why yeah, that's why I'm like when we talk, I'm like, yeah, he's got to be an INFJ or an INFP because otherwise we'd have nothing to talk about. I think I said that before. It's like, yeah, there are very few people that think
Uh,
the same way. Um,
there we go.
yeah. So yeah, those are my things. They're just really uh, just more resources. Um, Also, if you are feeling suicidal, there are places to turn. Like for example, this is where you can plug your group, Discarded Vet. um, there are places that you can turn that you can say anything you want, and it's not. I mean, you could. I mean, I'm just going to volunteer, Mr. Discarded Vet here. Private message him because I know he would help. I know he would. Right?
Yeah, a lot of
Okay.
us do. I mean, there are the main numbers,
Yeah.
suicide one, but the best, my my best places on that subject personally is the private vet groups. Not everybody can get into those. Uh,
Oh,
that
yeah.
isn't an option for anybody, but the kind of
See, I
help
didn't
and
even know
support that
about them.
goes on in those is just amazing. So I
Oh,
would
that's so glad.
actually, I would actually prefer directing anybody to like a big group that they're in, like a support group. And if you're not in one, find one. Find
Yeah.
one,
So
whatever
the
your passion is, and you know, with other like-minded people, and ask for help there. it's a lot of people think they're shaming it, but you'd be surprised at how many people will help you, and you probably get, I would think you get a lot better help than the government systems and stuff that
Oh yeah.
um, just fail
Yeah.
us. They fail us in every respect,
Yeah.
and it's really quite interesting, like with my Social Security and with everything that I deal with because of my disabilities, the day-to-day life stuff that I have to go through, there is no support system set up for us. As a matter of fact,
Mm-mm.
I'm trying to find a disability attorney to help me with some civil and criminal stuff, not me being a
Oh, yeah.
perpetrator in crimes, but being a victim in crimes. So I'm
Mhm.
looking for victim rights help, and I'm looking for um, uh, civil litigation help. And there
Mhm.
isn't really any attorneys out there for us. I mean, obviously, if you have money, you can get any attorney you want, but
Mhm.
there's free help, or disabled vet help or low income help, for a lot of different things, but not for the specific things I need help with, which
Which
are
are
things that,
enormous.
yeah, which
Huge.
are things that are caused by disabilities. As a matter of fact, every single one of the instances that I need help with are because of my disabilities were involved very
Yep.
heavily in it.
Yeah.
And it's just shocking to me everywhere I turn, there is no help and support, which is why keeping the friends and family around is important, because when you're alone and there's no help from the system or anything, and then you don't have anybody to turn to, I really see how it'd be very easy to become suicidal. So, you know,
Oh,
yeah.
I just thought of something else huge. Um, when it comes to our illnesses, if we have a professional or a friend, peer that we talk to so that we don't have to talk to our families about it, it can take a lot of strain off of them. Because they don't honestly, I mean, for myself, I didn't understand, but after hearing about discarded vets experience, I'm like, "Oh, obviously." I mean, for me, I can see why his family is reacting the way they are. Not all of them, but some of them. Um, like, as a mother, if my child were going through this, I would be beside myself with worry and want to save him, but I would know there's nothing I could do, and that would make me literally insane to some degree. So, I mean, and then they act kinda cold, and that can only be taken as you don't care or you don't believe me or, you
Yeah.
know, and some of it is maybe. I'm pretty sure some of it actually does go into, like, they're just, like, in denial, like, "I don't wanna deal with this anymore," or, you know, they think you're
Well, it all
being
goes
negative.
back to, yeah, it all just goes back to the root thing that, people just want to, try and have no problems in their life and just
Yeah,
try and get through. And that's the
yeah.
thing, as a society as a whole, talking about everybody's relationship with each other, we are in a fight to survive mode, all of us. We
Mhm.
aren't in a living to thrive mode. We're in a fight to survive, which are two completely different states of being.
Yes.
And that's what we have to fix, because, the stress of, all the caregivers out there and family and friends, the stress and worry of our family dynamics and dynamics and fights that we have for miscommunications, all this kind of stuff impacts our health. The
Yeah.
stress directly causes more issues in the body when you
Mhm.
have MUCMI.
Yep.
And then that means that you're not going to be around very soon. So
Yeah.
what ends up happening for so many people is they get in a fight with their vet, say, that was toxic exposed. He or she is ostracized from the family. They're off on their own. They're thought of as a crazy, angry, negative, whatever, all
Mhm.
those bad names kind of person. They die, and then everybody feels sad that they didn't like help more or, you
Mhm.
know, do something.
Lend an ear,
Uh,
you
or
know?
they go into denial and they say, well, they were just an angry person. At least they're out of pain and misery and they call it good. And,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just all these bad things that happen because of all this. And
Yeah.
it's all so preventable with the right education, with
Mhm.
the right conversations. Um, and, we really do need to fix our medical and food supply. None of
Yeah.
us are going to survive unless we do those things. It's
Yeah.
the chances are so slim.
Yeah.
So, all right. Do
It's
you have anything
bad.
else to add on that, or are we all
No.
set?
Nope.
I think
Nope.
I'm spent.
I think we're good, and if there's anything else, we can come make a comment or something, right?
Yep. And also, yeah, some of my cognitive stuff has impacted this spaces in particular, and I probably missed some stuff, and I probably went off on more tangents, and I definitely said something opposite. I know that. I
It
might
was
not have
cool to
caught
see.
that.
It was very cool to
Um,
see, though. You said it, and then it happened. That was awesome.
yeah, and I recognize it, but yeah, the
Mhm.
times that I don't, that's when it's a problem, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's wild.
and the person could think, oh, you meant that. Now you're just changing it or something, which
Mhm.
those things, there's so many bad dynamics that happen with communication problems. But
Yeah.
anyway, yep. As always, like this is going to get posted to YouTube and the Facebook group now, and people will be listening to it and weighing in on the group on this for any further activity on it. There might be some stuff on Twitter X, but I think most of it's on Facebook now. In the group, discarded vet doc.
Right on.
So next Tuesday, we may or may not do it. It depends on a few things. But one thing we will certainly do is we'll make announcements of when we're going live. It doesn't look like anybody is really paying attention to the lives right now, and that might change. And we'll get more serious about things being weekly if that changes. What we're doing right now is we're wrapping up the last little bit of content
Mhm.
um, in the group and stuff, and that's why we might not do something next week is because I'm gonna focus my energy on outreach to start bringing some people to the group to show them what we're doing here, some experts, some other sick groups, people that are sick,
Mhm.
so they could see what we're doing and maybe we could start getting more participation. And it's fine if the participation doesn't come right away. I don't expect it to, um, especially with the glitches and the shadow ban and everything else working
Mhm.
against us. But we do have to spread this word and make it viral
Uh,
because we're
yeah.
you can see it all around. Just turn on the news. We're in serious trouble and we need to start turning things around.
Yeah. You know how you were saying about you have some instincts and stuff. This whole thing, it was interesting how this whole thing really came to fruition just as spaces came on into availability. So, like, nobody knows how to use it yet, you
Yeah,
know,
there's that
if
too.
they know it's exists, if they even know it exists. So,
Yep.
yeah.
It'll
So,
be it'll be a little bit the spaces will be more interesting when more people are involved and they can weigh in their
yeah.
opinions instead of just us two,
I know that would be very
Um,
good.
but we'll get there. I mean,
Yep.
I still have hopes in this, and
Mhm.
we'll just keep plugging forward and do the outreach now to get some people coming.
Yeah.
And
All right.
even if you miss the live, that's fine. You can still weigh in on things with your own TikTok or your own video post or your own spaces post. You just
Yeah.
provide your link right in the reply, or you can type it out, in a post. Either any of those ways work.
You know,
And
I know 2 guys that are vets on TikTok, and as you were talking today, I was like, "Oh, I wish so and so were here so he could, weigh in on that." I'll just maybe I should tell them. How
yeah, you
complicated
should.
is that?
Yeah,
I'll tell
that's
them.
what everybody should do. Is
Yeah,
we should all tell each other about this space for
yeah,
all of us as toxic exposed individual. And it doesn't matter if you're a vet or a civilian. We're just, like I said, us vets are the long study. We're the beta test. And so
yeah,
we're just kind of the front line of this and, taking the brunt as far as the attacks and all that.
yeah. Yep.
So anyway,
Alright. Thank
all right.
you. Thanks,
Well,
everyone, in the
yep.
future,
Yeah.
and
In the future.
alright, I'll talk to you in a minute, probably, no. Alright, thanks.
All righty. Catch you
Alright,
later.
bye.